This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to the October monthly partnership meeting of the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership, or SCDRP for short. My name is Heather McCarthy. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of SCDRP since 2022. Since we last met, our region has endured two major hurricanes, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. I know many of our partners have been actively engaged with pre- and post-storm activities to protect and then to help recover our communities. I have seen the heartbreak and the fatigue on your faces. The losses have been devastating in a multitude of ways, and I just want to thank you for all that you do each day. This has been a very rough hurricane season, and I don't even know if we're through it yet. I also want to reconfirm our commitment together to regional collaboration and our collective fight for a future in which all communities across the Southeast and Caribbean are more resilient to climate change, natural hazards, and disasters. I offer my deepest expression of gratitude and respect for those working on the front lines of disaster recovery today, and a special thank you to those of you who are able to join us this morning. A pleasure to have you with us today. So here's our agenda for today. First, some reminders regarding the SCDRP 9th Annual Meeting 2025 in Wilmington. And today we have quite the treat for you, a unique webinar that we call the Partner Project Parade, which will highlight 4 speakers from around our region. And then I will reveal our speakers for our upcoming winter monthly partnership meetings, and we are booked with speakers up until February. And lastly, we will wrap up with our partner sharing time. So please be ready to share your announcements from around the region, and you can always share them in the chat. Claire and I collect those as we go. North Carolina, we are excited to be coming your way. The 2025 SCDRP 9th Annual Meeting is scheduled for February 4th and 5th, 2025 in lovely downtown Wilmington. Registration is open via Eventbrite. You can find details on our website through this QR code or link, and I hope to see you all there. Become a sponsor of the SCDRP 9th Annual Meeting. Sponsorship funds are used to support need-based registration scholarships for nonprofits, students, and community champions. Sponsorship funds also bring us special events, including field trips, meetups, and keynote speakers that inspire and challenge us. A very special thank you to our first gold sponsor, SWCA Environmental Consultants. The 30-person annual meeting steering committee has been working hard already, and we have tentative special event plans, including a Tuesday afternoon field trip to Battleship, North Carolina, to hear from 4 different speakers on site, and together we will examine and discuss the history, the planning, design, installation, maintenance, and monitoring of the Living with Water projects on this vulnerable and significant island. We need a $1,000 sponsor to cover the expenses related to this field trip, so please reach out if interested. Thank you. So we launched the SCDRP mentorship program this fall with incredible enthusiasm from you, our partners. We reached new members through LinkedIn and our very popular job board on our website. And we're planning our first mentor-mentee meetup on Monday evening, February 3rd, in conjunction with the SCDRP 9th Annual Meeting in Wilmington. And I want you to know that all program sponsors are invited to attend this first in-person mentor-mentee meetup. A special thank you to sponsorships from Adam Stein and the Sapelo Island National Estuarine Research Reserve. So please follow this QR code if you or your organization are interested in being a part of this impactful initiative. Next, I'm excited to bring you the first SCDRP Partner Project Parade webinar featuring 4 lightning talks from the following speakers. Dr. Meredith Hovis, wave, Assistant Professor at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Jennifer Kline, Coastal Hazards Specialist at Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Hi, Jennifer. and Hillary Lohman, Coastal Resilience Coordinator at the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Planning and Natural Resources Division of Coastal Zone Management. And Agnes Crespo, Director of Puerto Rico Division for the Institute for Building Technology and Safety, or IBTS. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce each of our super speakers for today. First up is Meredith Hovis. Meredith is an assistant professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences at UNC Wilmington. She is an interdisciplinary social scientist, commonly using qualitative and quantitative methods in public administration, policy, and economic disciplines. Her primary areas of expertise include nature-based solutions, community engagement and co-production of knowledge, climate adaptation, disaster resilience, and natural resource management, policy, and economics. Interestingly, while Meredith was the previous executive director of SCDRP, and she trained me. She graduated with her PhD from NC State when she was executive director. She left our region for a little while as a postdoc, and it's awesome to see her come back to our region and continue her impactful research. Welcome, Meredith. Next up, we have Jennifer Kline. Jennifer, are you here to turn your camera on? There she is. Okay. Jennifer's the Coastal Hazard Specialist for Georgia Department of Natural Resources. She has where she has worked for the last 23 years. She's a specialist for the Georgia Coastal Management Program, which represents 11 coastal counties. Some recent projects include serving as the co-chair of the Coastal States Organization's Coastal Hazard Planning and Adaptation Work Group, on the implementation team for the National Coastal Inundation Community of Practice, and project lead on the Building Resiliency with Nature-Based Infrastructure project. Jennifer works closely with local governments in relaying information from federal and other state agencies regarding coastal hazards planning. Jennifer's been an active member of SCDRP for many years. Welcome, Jennifer. Next up, Hillary Lohman. And Hillary, if you could turn your camera on for just a minute. Hillary is saving bandwidth by turning her camera on and off. So Hillary has worked in small island resilience around the Caribbean for 10 years, including Dominican Republic, Barbados, Belize, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hillary's been working in USVI since 2016 and has been the territory's Coastal Resilience Coordinator since 2019. With a background in natural and social sciences, and a unique position in the territory, Hillary works on a diverse set of exciting and challenging projects that plan for and respond to impacts of climate change to the natural and built environment, communities, and systems of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hillary's also been an active in SCDRP for many years and currently serves on our advisory board. Welcome, Hillary. Our last speaker today is Agnes Crespo Quintana, and she has over 18 years of experience developing public policy, furthering Puerto Rico's economic development and disaster recovery efforts, and engaging stakeholders across the island's public, private, and nonprofit sectors. You can wave, Agnes. Agnes joined IBTS, the Institute for Building Technology and Safety, in 2021 and is currently the director of the Puerto Rico division. She is responsible for leading IBTS's many initiatives that focus on ensuring a resilient future for Puerto Rico, including overseeing programs funded through FEMA and HUD's Community Development Block Grants for disaster recovery. Agnes serves her region through community planning, building code and safety expertise, workforce development, and resilience assessment services. As director, Agnes leverages her expertise as a liaison to government agencies and community organizations that are advancing the island's reconstruction and recovery and creating public policies directed toward social economic development. Prior to joining IBTS, Agnes worked with both the Puerto Rico Department of Housing and the Department of Economic Development and Commerce of Puerto Rico, and as the lead of the Economic Development Unit for the Puerto Rico Community Foundation. She's an experienced attorney and entrepreneurial coach who has focused on guiding government agencies, businesses, and nonprofits in resilience, corporate social responsibility, and sustainable development approaches, as well as offering legal support, grant writing, and business development services. Welcome, Agnes. So Meredith, Jennifer, Hillary, and Agnes, a big thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experiences with our partnership today. So our speakers today will each present for 8 minutes. You will see me give them a 1-minute green warning and a 30-second yellow warning. I will try very hard not to be too disruptive, and a stop red warning. Please note, we will hold all questions until the end. First, it is my pleasure to present Dr. Meredith Hovis.
All right, good morning. I believe you can hear me okay. Thanks for having me, and thank you for inviting me, Heather and Claire. It's good to be back. And so, like my introduction, as Heather gave, right, my name is Meredith Hovis. I'm an assistant professor, second year here at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I'm excited for you all to come to Wilmington for the annual meeting this year. Next slide, let's get started. So the majority of my work is looking towards disaster resilience, right? Perfect spot here with SCDRP, and 3 main ways on how my research works towards disaster resilience is through governance, through institutions, structures, processes that I commonly study. How are decisions made? Who are people making decisions in this space? A lot of my work as well is looking at nature-based solutions, which I'm going to share a little bit about my findings on public perceptions of nature-based solutions. But how can we sustainably manage our natural ecosystems for better mitigation of disastrous impacts, such as flooding? It's the majority of my work I'll get into today. And then third, I really focus in my research on something called co-production of knowledge. And it's kind of a fun buzzword right now, but really what this is collaboration and integration of multiple ways of knowing. So instead of just using traditional Western or academic knowledge, I work with a lot of communities on gaining their insight, both local indigenous knowledge into research efforts. Right, and then finally here, how I'm defining disaster resilience is how are these communities that I'm working with that are are most vulnerable to these disasters that are occurring within North Carolina and the Southeast, how are these communities able to adapt to these hazards that we experience? Next slide, please. So in Eastern North Carolina is where I focus the majority of my work. And time again, we have seen hurricanes coming in and damaging the majority of the eastern part of the state, right? It is mostly agricultural communities, low-income communities. And from these hurricanes, time after time, we have seen billions of dollars in destruction, majority of which are agricultural and livestock products. Next slide, please. So my work looks at how can we mitigate these impacts from happening? What can these communities, these rural low-income communities, do ahead of time instead of always in this recovery phase? The issue that we're seeing in these rural communities are a lot of institutional barriers. So federal hazard mitigation programs, right? They allocate some costs to a lot of mitigation efforts, but not all of the costs. And then a really big hurdle too, these counties and these communities are trying to meet day-to-day needs and activities. They don't have the capacity, the staff, the resources to apply for these large hazard mitigation grants. So a lot of my research looks at what are some different programs that can help lift these communities up and help them be prepared for these disasters that may occur in the future. Next slide, please. So the majority of my work looks at leveraging nature-based solutions. And so my research and some of the the strategies that I look at fall along some type of on this spectrum somehow, right? So in adopting nature-based solutions such as wetlands, forests, stream restoration, all to help with flood mitigation in particular is what I look at. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to find was three main research questions that I was interested in and still working towards, but I really am going to focus on this third question here. Next slide, please, Heather, which are what are the determinants that influence willingness to accept nature-based solutions? So why would landowners want to incorporate nature-based solutions for flood mitigation on their properties? Who are those individuals that want to adopt these practices? I'm going to share a little bit about what we found. Next slide, please. So we focused in a county in Robeson County, which is a prime example that has been hurt time and time again after hurricane after hurricane and subsequent flooding issues. It is a low income county, probably one of the lowest income within the country as well. It is consisting of agricultural lands as well, and also home to a lot of indigenous members of the Lumbee tribe. So we've worked with these communities through a number of different community engagement opportunities, and we sent out a survey to understand what's their familiarity, what's their interest in adopting nature-based solutions, and are they already doing this on their properties, right? We want to learn from them and the practices that they already do. Next slide, please. And so, sorry, this slide came out a little wonky here when I sent it over to Heather. I'm happy to send these slides if you're interested in learning more about this work. But what we found is that, yes, the majority of people are interested in adopting nature-based solutions on their properties for flood mitigation. They are desperate for solutions and for help. But what we found is that the majority are requiring payments, right, to help cover the costs of these practices, as well as requiring technical assistance. Next slide, please. We wanted to find out what is the actual sweet spot number that these landowners would be willing to accept. What's that payment that they would require for both? We kind of categorize these here in two different types of nature-based solution categories. One that are more farm-based agricultural practices that they're already familiar with, such as cover crops, or more structural type nature-based solutions like wetland restoration. And we found that that $128 per acre per year and $132 per acre per year is what they would require to implement nature-based solutions on their property. Next slide, please. And then we wanted to find out what are the characteristics of these people, right? And this was at no surprise. People that lost larger agricultural production or livestock losses were more willing to accept these practices. Folks that perceived risk of flooding in the future, their concern or worry of flooding in the future, were more willing to accept. Folks that had a higher income, revenue generation, were more willing to accept these practices. And then we found that younger or newer farmers are more willing to accept. One thing that was kind of off that we found, and I'm happy to talk more about what the literature and the research around these factors discuss, but one thing that was kind of off to us is that the amount of flood times, we actually found that there was a negative correlation with the amount of flooding that had occurred on their property and if they were willing to accept or not. So that's something that did stick out to us. Next slide, please. So I've worked with a whole bunch of group of professionals in disaster resilience, community partners to really work on this research. And it's ongoing. We're still working on this, and I welcome the opportunity for anyone that's interested in this kind of work around nature-based solutions, working with low-income communities. Please contact me. Next slide, please. I'm happy to continue this research. Some key references if you want to look more into what the research and the data that we found. Next slide, please. Great. So feel free, if we don't have time for questions, feel free to drop my email down here. You can visit our lab website as well to check out what we've been doing. More than happy to collaborate, and look forward to seeing you all in Wilmington. Thank you. Oh, I think you're mute, Heather, but I think you're saying I did a great job. And I was under
Yes,
time.
yes, I was. Thank you so much, Meredith. And yes, you were 4 seconds under time. Nice job. Next,
Awesome.
next, it's my pleasure to present Jennifer Kline.
Can I have her 4 seconds, please?
Yes.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
Well, thank you. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. My name is Jennifer Kline. I am the Coastal Hazard Specialist at Georgia DNR's Coastal Management Program. Our program, it does focus on 11 coastal counties in Georgia. We have our first 6 ocean-facing communities, and then we go inland 1 tier for 5 more communities because those counties are also tidally influenced. And so that is our service area. Next, please. So we really have been doing, we have a lot of general kind of programs where we've been working, and just recently in the last couple of years have realized that a lot of what we do in those programs get to the, the biggest issue of resiliency. And so really trying to kind of package it all under that resiliency lens has been our focus lately. And so we have come together and come up with our definition for coastal resiliency, which we would say it is the ability of a community to adapt to changing conditions and withstand and recover from a societal, physical, economic, or ecological disruption. And so we have been working to do that with also considering equity and inclusion moving forward. Next slide. And so some of the ways that we've done that, our wetlands program, looking at which we consider adaptation, is we do a lot of UAV wetland assessments for in-house and for our constituents, our local governments. We've been doing stormwater culvert assessments. We do sea level rise monitoring, and then have been looking at thin layer placement, site review and monitoring as well. Next slide. Also, our Living Shorelines program, which we consider mitigation for resiliency. We have about 12 to 13 projects here in coastal Georgia. We would love to see more people come in for those permits. And so we've been working on being able to promote that. And we've been developing a guidance document. It's a living shoreline standards, site suitability, best management practices for local governments, for private owners, contractors, and engineers, and getting that word out there, and on the street. Next slide, please. Looks like I have a typo on that slide too. Okay. The next is we have a green growth specialist, low impact development section, and really that is also working through with a resiliency lens and adaptation and mitigation, and really working with the general public and our community on understanding how they can be a part of the solution. And we've been doing community rain barrel workshops, for about maybe 12 years now. We've also worked on, we've pulled together a suite of model ordinances, tools, resiliency, model ordinance, sea level rise model ordinance, risk reduction model ordinances, that is then put together in a guide and given back out to our communities to be able to use. Next slide. Our coastal hazards, which is kind of my baby. And that's obviously also looking through a resiliency lens for adaptation and mitigation. We've completed a flood literacy project that really looked at common terminology through all flooding professionals, so that we're using the same language and getting that out there, through media, through to the public and to our stakeholders. It's very extremely important to use the same terms. Same with our community disaster recovery and redevelopment planning initiatives, which we completed a while back, but we're keeping those kind of in the forefront of their minds, especially right now. And then just kind of community level and state level planning, offering training and workshops, and then working with researchers to attain Georgia-specific climate data. And if you are interested in the flood literacy project, that is the QR code for that. Next slide, please. Resources. We are just wrapping up a sea level affecting marsh model run for all 6 of our coastal counties with our latest LIDAR using some Georgia-specific data. We then will be putting out some of these sea level rise maps that we can give to each of our coastal communities for better planning and for decision support that our communities need. Next slide. Resources, money. We take about a big portion of our NOAA Coastal Management grant and we flip it around to what we call our Coastal Incentive Grant Program. And we give that back to state agencies other than DNR, to other researchers, academia, and our local governments to be able to do projects that help with resiliency. And we have, as the slide mentions, given about over $4 million back out for those types of projects that they can do in-house. Next slide. And then recently we are if you work with local governments, you know that turnover is a challenge, and keeping that education in-house it can be frustrating as a coastal manager. And it's a challenge in making sure that our local governments are constantly educated and up to speed. So we've been working with our partners at UGA's Carl Vinson Institute of Government to pull together an academy, a routine leadership academy. So we are teaching our local elected officials on, maybe it's going to be a 2-year basis of what these terms are, getting out and seeing exactly, what some of the issues are, what our, coastal natural resources can provide to them, and how other communities are handling some of these issues. So it's in their forefront, even if they turn over every 2 years. So that's our next step. Next, please. Some of the challenges that we have faced. Obviously, there's going to be skeptics at every level. As I mentioned, political turnover is a challenge. It helps if you have a community champion. Funding is always going to be an issue, even though it hasn't been here recently. I know that will come in waves. It is not legally required to do a lot of this planning here in our state, and change. People always are, hard to change. Next slide. So our next step, I'm super excited to announce that we are planning our 3rd Georgia Climate Conference. It will be on Jekyll Island here, October 20th and 21st of 2025. And we're super excited to bring that back around. And thank you. That's all I have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Nice job on the 8 minutes, too. Next, it's my pleasure to present our 3rd speaker, Hillary Lohman.
Hi, good morning. Starting my timer. My name is Hillary Lohman. I'm the Coastal Resilience Coordinator in the Department of Planning and Natural Resources in the Virgin Islands. Next slide, please. The U.S. Virgin Islands are in the Atlantic Ocean, about 40 miles east of Puerto Rico and immediately west of the British Virgin Islands. The USVI consists of the main islands of St. Thomas, which is to the northwest or the top left here, St. John is the northeast or top right, and St. Croix is the southernmost, and 50 other surrounding minor islands and keys. The total land area of the territory is 133.73 square miles. Next slide, please. The highest point is Crown Mountain on St. Thomas, again, that top left island here. It's 1,555 feet high. The islands have no rivers, but rather guts or ephemeral stream beds. Slope ranges are steep, very steep in St. Thomas and St. John, many places at 25 to 50% or above, with low infiltration soils. The territory islands are surrounded, of course, we're at the tropical climate at the 17th latitude, so we're surrounded by critical habitats like coral reef, seagrass, and wetlands. Climate change impacts, like everywhere else, include warming air and sea temperatures, intensifying rainfall, severe storms and droughts, sea level rise, and declining ecosystems and biodiversity. Next slide, please. The population of the Virgin Islands of the United States, which it actually officially is, different slide, all right. Heather, could you go to slide what I think is 13 for you? Is that, never mind, too much? Okay. I didn't realize we'd have to go skip it once. We'll go with the USVI agencies. I was going to talk about the USVI. It's a small place. I described that. Thank you. We'll stick here. So I work for the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, which is within this small government of the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is a territory of the United States. So we're really about the size of like a county, because the population is 87,000 or so, but we function as a state because it's just a one-tiered government. So within that government, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, where I work, is mandated to protect, maintain, and manage the natural and cultural resources of the Virgin Islands. The Coastal Zone Management Program, where I work, was established to manage, enhance, protect, and preserve coastal resources while reducing conflicts between competing land and water uses. The Department of Works, who's the agency partner that I'm discussing here as we do a lot of watershed management work together. DPW is mandated to plan, construct, and maintain the territory's public roads, highways, storm drainage systems, public transportation systems, public facilities, and buildings. So DPNR and DPW collaborate to address flooding and drought for hazard mitigation and climate resilience by implementing watershed management to advance drainage improvements, expand water capture and storage, nature-based solutions, and improve water quality runoff as it moves across the small islands and out into the coastal zone. This photo is a site where our agencies are working together on a roadway that's very near to the shoreline, which has some mangroves and habitats in that bay there. Next slide, please. Of course, so I'm going to discuss opportunities and the way we've worked since 2017, when Category 5 hurricanes Irma and Maria directly hit all three of the Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico within 2 weeks' time. Each Irma and Maria brought 6 to 10 inches of rain, with weeks of heavy rain thereafter as well. Next slide, please. Damage included debris, landslides, retaining wall failures, erosion, and road surface deterioration. Damage to infrastructure was estimated at almost $7 billion, with over $55 million in road damages, accounting for over 780 miles of roads, again, on these small islands. Next slide, please. These extreme events, of course, continue. We had Tropical Storm Ernesto this is supposed to say August 2024. This was just this last summer. This event also brought 6 to 10 inches of rain to St. Thomas, which led to landslides and coastal runoff, which is showed here. So in events like these, our drainage system gets blocked and overrun, causing erosion and polluted runoff in coastal habitats. Next slide, please. So since 2018, because of the storms in 2017, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources and Department of Public Works have managed federal funds, mostly kicking off with FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, initiated because of the 2017 storms. So we use that money to develop and implement watershed management plans, including green-gray infrastructure for drainage improvements and stormwater capture and storage. We are small islands with no rivers or lakes. Managing water can also include capturing it instead of just improving runoff. Hazard mitigation benefits include flood reduction, erosion control, and drought resilience, as well as pollution control. There's over 36 million in watershed-friendly Phase 1 hazard mitigation grant program projects in the VI right now. Next slide, please. It's really exciting that many of these projects to improve infrastructure, flood, and drought mitigation are also occurring in and around socially vulnerable communities. This map is based on the Social Vulnerability Index from 2010 and 2020 census data, with redder areas indicating higher social vulnerability. Next slide, please. Project types include on subsurface chambers. So you peel back a field, put some chambers underneath as shown in the bottom left here, put the field back on top, and you have the same kind of land cover as you had before with some improved drainage. We are trialing some of these now. A lot of other predictable things: retention ponds, rain gardens, culvert upgrades. We're looking at slope stabilization to mitigate erosion, and things like a territory-wide slope analysis. These are things that became possible through the 2017 HMGP program. Sorry, through the program because of our event in 2017. Next slide, please. So with the little bit of time I have left, I just wanted to share some things that I think are helpful from my perspective about 5 years into this all now. I'm excited that we kept a lot of the momentum from the HMGP initiative, and we made sure also now, just keep going. We're taking advantage as well of the Biden administration bipartisan infrastructure law money, Inflation Reduction Act money. We have about $25 million secured now in BIL funding, and we're still applying for more. This is we together now. This is DPNR and DPW. So mixing and matching matters, and staying connected matters because benefits grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hillary. And I think there's a slide that we were missing. Oh, sorry about that. It probably happened in the translation from PowerPoint to over to Google Slides. Thank you again. And lastly, it's my pleasure to present our fourth and final speaker, Agnes Crespo Quintana.
Hi, everyone. Hillary, I love your photos. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. I'm Agnes Crespo Quintana. I manage the Puerto Rico region office for the Institute for Building Technology and Safety. And as Hillary just mentioned, we had some hurricanes in 2017, category 5. For me, in this era, right, as I know it, it was the worst scenario that we have in about 100 years. And being an island, we have managed that difficulty that still in 2000 now 24, and we're still recovering. So next slide, please. A little bit better. This is 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after the Hurricane Maria in September 20, 2017. And this is not in the mountains. This is not far away in the mountains. They were in the coast, but we cannot get there because of the debris, the trees, and everything there. They need it. It says SOS. We need water and food. So the difficulty, let me tell you, 100% without power, telecommunications, not internet, of course, water was also limited because almost everything needs pumps and power for the pumps. So we didn't have any kind of utility. And being an island, the food was limited because we couldn't have entering the every the materials and everything. So that was the scenario 2017, and let me tell you, it has not evolved so much, and that's what IBTS is working on. Next slide, please. With CDBGDR funds, we are working in a whole community resilience planning program. What is that? This is a bottoms up a program. And why is this so important? I don't know in your regions, but let me tell you, in Puerto Rico, all mayors, all politicians, let's say, have funding, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to implement or construct or whatever, without having that consult with the community. What do you want? If you are suffering the situation, you are the best person to tell me, how do you think I can solve it, right? So that has not happened in ages in Puerto Rico. This project brings that communication. We want to hear their voices. And IBTS have funding to manage 10 communities. As for now, we have managed until now 18 communities. And I was talking to Heather. We use the way of that everyone has the train of the resilience. So we manage the train. We are coming for different stations, and they vote if they are if they validate the information, or if they want to a yellow if they want to include more information, because maybe we don't have all the story. We have learned so much about our communities. We have learned, and they even have learned why the community is called that way, let's say. And what is important, our team, we are a team of 7 planners. We have architects, engineers, and we have even an anthropologist. This is super important because we need to understand how these humans, how they feel and how they think, not necessarily because they have suffered the hurricane, because we have been in an economic downturn since 2006. So the burden has been here. The hurricane only opened it to the world, right? So and at that point, our experts guide them, but we need their of course, their voice, and to understand their conditions, and so we can enhance their stability and their resilience. Next slide, please. Everything is with a methodology. We don't go to the community without having a methodology, and we are guided also with other stakeholders that can manage and can give us that kind of guidance. This planning process have an evaluation of the current conditions. We do surveys. We have our own methodology and our own survey. Like SurveyMonkey, we have our license of Qualtrics that help us understand and do like a census. We do workshops, and we do focus groups. This is a live document. If we are presenting to the community and they say no, that is not necessarily right, or I want to add information, the document continues evolving and editing. As I say, we integrate all stakeholders, academy, of course, local governments, if they are available. Sometimes they don't want this process, let me tell you. Some mayors have come to our reunions and they say, you have to cut this, you cannot be here. So it's a challenge, and IBTS is here to be the liaison with that communities to establish their priorities and, of course, present solutions. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the community is vital here. It's they are the main characters. So active participation is super important, and we when we lived there, when we go back, we led there a committee. If they don't have a residents association or a community organization, we promote that they create that. They elect their working committee, they work on it, and they do, we work with theory change so they can understand and accept that they need to change, because it's not only what it's damage for the hurricanes, it's only that, for example, we go to and now you see it there. That house has it's so important because it has like a little river besides, and the part of the house is it's damaged. And if you say to the person, if you ask to the person, "Are you okay?" and of course, I live so well. Not really, because your house is so damaged that you have to move on. They don't want to. So that is the importance to validate, but also try to try to understand that they need to move. Please, next slide. As we are part of the resilience, we do workforce training, also projects to professionalize the trades and the construction center, so much needed in this time. Next slide, please. To finish, as I told you, the hurricane was the worst in our time, and the last community had power 11 months after the hurricanes. So we are part of that resilience in bringing 100% renewable energy per a law that we have, that we need to get to 100% renewable for the correct resilience in our island. So thank you so much. It was a challenge, the 8 minutes, but I think you got the point. I'm available. Thank you. We
Fantastic.
our office is there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Agnes. We did it. We did it, guys. We did 8 minutes each. We got a fantastic look at different projects going on throughout the region. Looking at the clock, I think we have time for a few questions. And let's see. I'm looking for raised hands. I'm looking for questions in the chat. Okay. If you have any questions for any of our speakers later, all of them are going to drop their emails into the chat box. Keisha Long in the chat has asked for websites for each presenter to get a little bit more information about you and your work. If you would drop those into the chat as well. And I see a chat box question from Amanda Guthrie in South Carolina. How have you handled or learned about misinformation or misunderstandings among residents? Good question. Who would like to tackle that one?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, Agnes. The question is, how have you handled or learned about misinformation or misunderstandings among residents?
Well, definitely for me, it's super important that get everyone in the same place. We go to communities and everyone has their own story, right? So in that place, we always, as being a not-for-profit, is super important, because I always say we are not the government, even though we are funded for some federal funds. Of course, we are not the government. So that opens like a better space, so everyone seems comfortable, feels comfortable to explain themselves. And when they are misinformation, we gather facts, right? We are professionals, we are planners, researchers. So we say, no, this is what the facts are, or the data that we have provided. And then we try, because that is our mission, to put them in let's say in a focus groups to discuss the outcomes. And that's how we have managed, even with the mayor that didn't want us there.
Thank you so much, Agnes, for sharing those experiences. And I think the recent hurricanes have shown us that new ways that misinformation or disinformation can challenge our work, and probably an issue that will continue to challenge our work into the foreseeable future. Thank you, speakers, for dropping your emails and websites into the chat box. And I think feel free to reach out, folks. Feel free to reach out to our speakers after today. And I want another big thank you to Meredith, Jennifer, Hillary, and Agnes for taking the time to share some of your cutting edge projects and initiatives with us through today's Partner Project Parade.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have just a few announcements before the top of the hour. I want you to know we're booked with webinar speakers until February. Please note the dates of our November and December monthly partnership meetings are moved up due to the holidays. So on November 1st, we will be hearing updates from Dr. Shelby Surveys from NOAA's new Climate Ready Nation office. She will present on building a climate ready nation through NOAA's IRA and BIL investments, and she's going to specifically focus on how those funds have been channeled to the Southeast and Caribbean regions. So we're excited to hear from Shelby. Next, on December 12th, we'll hear from Andrew Loeb-Schunig, facilitator of the North Carolina Inclusive Disaster Recovery Network, on the topic of community engagement. And Andy wants to bring in one of his community champions. So I think that will be very, very insightful. And hopefully by then, his work will have settled down a little bit in North Carolina. On January 29th, we will co-host with our parent organization, Socorro. And I'd like to ask you to please share your announcements, resources, and updates either in the chat box now, Claire will download them after our meeting, or email us at scdrp@socorro.org, and we will further share these in our next newsletter and on our SCDRP resources website. So this concludes our October monthly partnership meeting. A very special thank you to our 4 super speakers, Meredith Hovis from UNC Wilmington, Jennifer Kline from Georgia DNR, Hillary Lohman from USVI DPNR, and Agnes Crespo from IBTS Puerto Rico. And thank you for joining us today. See you next time on November 21st. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.